Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. In this video, we're going to be discussing an interesting what-if scenario. What if Harry Potter hadn't been Harry at all? What if Harry had actually been a girl? Okay, let's start with the basics and get the minor details out of the way, that kind of thing. If Harry Potter had been a girl, of course, his name wouldn't have been Harry at all, would it? So what would it have been? Well, as J.K. Rowling revealed on Pottermore a few years back, Harry was actually named after his great-grandfather Henry Potter, or Harry to his intimates. With this in mind, if Harry had been a girl, she likely would have been named after one of her relatives as well. Let's say then that James and Lily Potter decided to name their baby girl after James's grandmother, Euphemia. Euphemia, which means well-spoken or fair speech, and is pronounced like Euphemia, was a popular name in early Scotland. However, it was eventually overtaken by its nickname, Effie, meaning our heroine's formal name would have been Euphemia, but she likely would have gone by the more widely accepted and easier to pronounce version of the name, Effie, making our female version of Harry, Effie Potter. So what would have been next for our little Effie? Doubtful much would have changed in regard to her relationship with her parents, as limited as their time was together. Lily surely would have died trying to save her baby girl in the same way she died protecting her baby boy from Voldemort's killing curse. But, perhaps, this leads us to another more pertinent question. Would Voldemort have even come for the Potters at all? After all, the prophecy given by Sybil Trelawney in 1980 was about a boy who would be born in July of that same year with the ability to defeat Lord Voldemort. Of course, despite being born in July of 1980, this would have ruled out a daughter by Lily and James Potter, leaving Neville Longbottom as the only potential threat to the Dark Lord. This, of course, would have changed everything. Effie Potter, unlike poor Harry, would have grown up with a mum and dad. She would have been raised with the knowledge that she was a witch who was part of the wizarding world. She likely would have barely known the Dursleys, Lily's sister, Petunia, Petunia's husband, Vernon, and their son, Dudley. This wouldn't have been Lily's choice, of course, but rather a reflection of the Dursleys' disdain for all things magic and, in their opinions, unnatural. So, the three Potters may have continued to live in Godric's Hollow, and perhaps Lily and James would have eventually welcomed another child or two into their family. It stands to reason that Sirius Black would have still been Effie's godfather. Based on Sirius's kind and caring disposition towards Harry, one can only assume that Effie would have received the same love and affection from her godfather. Of course, Sirius never would have been framed for the Potters' murders and gone to Azkaban, leaving him to nurture a solid relationship with his goddaughter in a way he was never able to with Harry. It's pretty safe to say that Effie Potter's formative years would have been a lot less tragic than Harry's. She wouldn't have been an orphan, there was no attempt on her life by a powerful dark wizard, and instead of being abused and mistreated by her muggle relatives, she would have had a steadfast, adoring, magical godfather. There really is no comparison, is there? So, now that we've gone through the early years of Effie Potter, that brings us to her time at Hogwarts. How would Effie's experience at school have differed from Harry's? Well, without any ties to Lord Voldemort. Harry, of course, became the Dark Lord's unintended seventh Horcrux after he attempted to murder Harry, intrinsically linking the two. Effie would have been sorted into Gryffindor without question. This differs from Harry, who was almost placed in Slytherin by the Sorting Hat, but who ultimately went into Gryffindor due to his internal pleas with the hat. Having been placed in Gryffindor, I'd like to think that Effie would have befriended Hermione and Ron just as Harry did, although I think maybe she met the two once placed in the house, rather than at King's Cross Station and on the Hogwarts Express. After all, Lily and James would have taken Effie to the train and known exactly how to access Platform 9 3/4. No need for help from the friendly Weasley clan. She also may have known one or two witches or wizards from Godric's Hollow, with whom she could have sat with on the train. In any case, similar to Harry's friendships with Ron and Hermione, Effie would have eventually become best of friends with these two. It's not unreasonable, then, to consider the possibility that this trio could have ended up in a love triangle at some point, with both Effie and Hermione being interested in Ron. However, I suspect that instead of Ron being the love interest for both girls, perhaps Effie developed a crush on one of Ron's older brothers. If I had to guess, I'd say she fell for one of the twins, Fred or George. Since Fred meets his demise in the final installment of the series, let's say it was George. Keep things less tragic. Only a couple years her senior, both twins were in Gryffindor, giving Effie plenty of time to become interested in either boy, as she likely wouldn't have spent as much time at the Weasley household due to Lily and James being alive. Effie may also have played Quidditch for Gryffindor just as Harry did, another way in which she would have spent time with the twins, who were both beaters for the house team. So that about covers Effie's friendships and personal relationships at school, but what about her dynamics with the professors? A young Effie, who may have looked a little more like her mother than Harry did, could have potentially had a very different relationship with, say, Professor Snape. Although she still would have been James's child, without the striking physical resemblances to her father like Harry had, and the fact that Lily was still alive, Severus likely wouldn't have held the same contempt for Effie. In fact, if she looked much more like her mother than her father, he may have even favoured her. Add Snape's interest in Effie to the fact that she would not have been the chosen one from Professor Trelawney's prophecy, and I doubt that Albus Dumbledore would have shown as much interest in her as he did with Harry. So it's possible to think that Snape may have even stepped in as her mentor. Although Snape still would have been the head of Slytherin House, a long-standing rival of Gryffindor, which, in my opinion, makes it unlikely that he would have become Effie's mentor. It might have also been a little inappropriate if you ask me. After all, Snape was in love with Lily. It may have looked a bit creepy if he were to form a close relationship with her daughter. In any case, I'd like to think that he would have at least been kind to Effie in a way he never was with Harry. You know, in a polite, British kind of way. So, if I had my pick of mentors for Effie, I'd have to go with the obvious choice, Professor Minerva McGonagall, the Transfiguration teacher and head of Gryffindor House. With guidance from McGonagall, maybe Effie would have become skilled at Transfiguration in a way that never happened for Harry. Perhaps she would have even perfected her ability to transform herself into an animal at will and become an animagus like Professor McGonagall. This isn't too far-fetched either, especially since Effie's godfather, Sirius, was also an animagus. Effie grew up spending lots of time with this version of Sirius, so maybe she would have learned from an early age how to transform herself into, say, a doe, after her mother's Patronus. Once again, it looks like if Harry had been a girl, life at Hogwarts would not have been filled with nearly as much doom and gloom. Effie wouldn't have been involved in a lot of the misadventures that filled Harry's days, since, as we covered earlier in the video, she would not have been linked to Voldemort like Harry was. Yes, I think it's safe to say things would have been a fair bit more carefree for our Effie, with her focus at Hogwarts being mostly on her relationships and school. You know, normal kid stuff. Of course, this would have likely come to a halt when Voldemort returned to power, as it did for all students at Hogwarts. Alongside Hermione and Ron, she would have been involved in Dumbledore's army, led by Neville Longbottom, and when Voldemort brought the fight to Hogwarts, she would have fought alongside her classmates in the battle, and maybe even witnessed Fred's death, urging George to keep fighting amidst his grief in the battlefield. Finally, she would have been on the front lines as Neville finally defeated Voldemort. Later, in the epilogue, we would find out that she had married George. Perhaps they even named their kids the same as Harry and Ginny did, James Sirius, Albus Severus, and Lily Luna Potter. On second thought, maybe Molly or Arthur snuck into one of those names. After all, both the Potters and the Weasleys were still alive. Which brings us to the end of this video. If you enjoyed the content, I'd be grateful if you liked it and subscribed to the channel. As always, happy to hear your input on this and any other Harry Potter theories. Just leave them in the comments below. Also, please feel free to share any topics you'd like to see in upcoming videos. You guys always have great ideas. For more videos like this one, be sure to check out some of the other what-if theories, like what if Harry accepted Draco Malfoy's handshake, or what if Cedric Diggory never died. Until next time, you're a witch, Effie.